We begin with the search for the missing submersible, and this morning time may be running out for the crew on board.
Oxygen supplies are running dangerously low, and the Coast Guard estimates the crew will likely run out of air this morning. But that is certainly not slowing down search efforts. Rescuers are bringing in more equipment as they widen their focus, and officials say this is very much still a rescue operation. We have full coverage this morning. In just a moment, we'll speak with a retired U.S. Navy officer about the conditions the crew may be experiencing. But we're going to start with NBC News correspondent Jay Gray, who is in Boston for us again this morning. Jay, they are widening the search, but they're also bringing in more equipment and focusing on an area where there may have been some noises. What can you tell us about the current search strategy?
Yeah, Joe, Valerie, good morning. You're absolutely right. Throwing everything they have at this situation and trying to get assets out to the search grid as quickly as possible, though that's a very long trip, taking a day in some instances. We know that that grid is now at 10,000 square miles, 2 times the size of Connecticut, so it's grown really exponentially, and it still dives deep, about 2.5 miles below the ocean's surface, in and around that area where the ruins of the Titanic are. They are doubling the assets on top of the water, going from 5 to 10 ships that are scanning that region right now, and adding to that group of technology that is below the surface. They've had 2 underwater drones. They're bringing in several, they say, more remotely operated vehicles, including a deep diving robot that the government of France has loaned to the effort. So, yeah, they're moving quickly and doing what they can to add as many resources as possible to what is really an unprecedented search effort.
You know, Jay, from the very beginning, this has truly been a race against time. The Coast Guard estimates right now the oxygen level should be dangerously low in the Titan. But when the Coast Guard was asked yesterday, is this a rescue mission or a recovery mission, their answer was quite clear, wasn't it?
Yeah, no question. What you heard a lot from the leaders of these groups is hope, that they still have hope, that they're still making this effort. They understand the constraints here, and one of the biggest is that oxygen supply. But they say that won't define their effort in and around the site.
You know, Jay, we have been talking about these extreme depths here. The Titanic wrecked. It sits 12,000 feet below the surface, but the deepest that a Navy sub can reach is only 2,000 to 3,000 feet. That is a scary situation when you look at the difference between those two. So if they do find this submersible, which we hope they do they have a plan in place then to get to it and get it back up to the surface in time?
Yeah, I think, Joe, the most likely plan, and what they're basing things on, is that this capsule is stuck in some way, that it's mired in the mud or stuck in some of that debris from the wreckage, and that they can work out a situation where they can free it. They don't have a vehicle that can get down and lift it from there, but they do say that there are other options, and it's something that they continue to game plan on the run. Of course, identifying where the sub is key to all of that. They feel like, though, if they can do that, that they can get it to the surface. And remember, the U.S. Navy has sent in some salvage units that would be able to pull it from the water, but getting down to that level, you're absolutely right. It's just something they've never had to do before.
All right, Jay Gray in Boston. Jay, thank you so much.
Let's bring in retired U.S. Navy diving officer Joe Dettori for more on this. Joe, good morning. You're what's called a saturation diver, and we've spoken to you recently about how you spent time living for weeks underwater. What is the most important thing those 5 passengers should be doing right now to extend the oxygen that they may have left?
Sure. In these type of a situation, like very much like Apollo 13, what you need to do is just understand your systems and relax. A positive mental attitude at this point, just like the people on Apollo 13, extending that, because panic is not going to do anything for you, but relaxation is going to extend you and give you a more clear thought process.
Relaxation must be tough in a situation like this. Talk to us about the mental aspect of life below sea. We know there's only one window on this submersible and very limited space. How does someone remain calm in a situation like that? Is there an internal voice that you're trying to listen to? How do you do it?
Sure. When I was the officer in charge at Deep Submergence Unit and a one atmosphere suit pilot, it's basically a similar type situation, but absolutely not at this depth. So I cannot actually speak to what they're going through. However, when you're in this type of a situation, like I said before, that positive mental attitude is going to carry you through everything. It's the relaxing breathing because you're focusing on the end goal, which is survival.
We know search crews have detected noises from the water. We also know there is an experienced diver on that vessel. Is there anything that the passengers can do at this point to signal for help? Is that something that they would have trained for in a case of an emergency?
Absolutely. Sound propagates very well underwater. If you can strike metal objects, which is obviously the type of thing that everybody is trained for in the submersible and submarine realm. And basically, if you understand your systems, you can reroute your systems air, systems pressure, systems carbon dioxide scrubbing. You can extend that life, and everybody just takes a minute and relaxes. But this is where the team comes in. You have a team of people around you, and you're talking through this with the other people that you're around.
I was just going to ask you about that team. What do you think the most useful things they could be saying to each other just to get through this and, as you said, focus on survival?
So I'm also a cave diving instructor, and I teach this sort of stuff. And it's basically survival underwater, and I keep going back to it. I know I keep reiterating, but it's positive mental attitude. And you keep constantly reassuring your partner and constantly working through the systems and the problem. Panic is going to do absolutely nothing for you in any situation, not just this one, but in any situation, panic won't do anything. So,
Joe Dettori, we appreciate your insight on this. Thank you so much for being with us.
This morning, wild weather is gripping some parts of the country. Search and rescue crews are combing through wreckage after a deadly tornado tore through a small Texas town. At least 4 people were killed and 9 others hurt when the twister hit Matador, Texas. That's about 70 miles northeast of Lubbock. You can see where the storm splintered trees and scattered debris. Officials say at least 20 homes and businesses were destroyed, but that number could grow once the scope of the damage is better known. Farther west in Colorado, people were forced to run for cover after hail the size of tennis balls pummeled fans at a Louis Tomlinson concert at Red Rocks. At least 7 people were taken to the hospital with injuries, but they're all expected to be okay. Nearly 100 others were treated for cuts and broken bones.
Parents were just at that venue last weekend for a show, so
thankfully better weather for them.
Some rain, no hail at that point. Yeah, continuing with our coverage on the severe weather across the country, let's get a closer look at your Morning News Now weather forecast.
That means meteorologist Angie Lastman is with us with a look at what to expect. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. You know, that event yesterday in Colorado, the strong storms that we were expecting, it was well forecasted, and we once again have the same kind of threat as we get into the day today, mainly focused into the afternoon and the evening hours, but it does still have that threat of hail in the picture. Here's the big picture kind of look. You can see that slight risk, including places like Denver, stretching into parts of northern Texas. Wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour. Can't rule out some tornadoes, but the hail is the big threat. Hen egg sized hail is what we're going to be looking at through the afternoon hours today. And again, once again, including Denver, Pueblo, and stretching farther south into places like northern Texas. Now, on the eastern half of the country, we're looking at a different kind of impactful day when it comes to weather. And that's because we have a slow moving storm system that's bringing kind of repeated rounds of some heavy rain to folks stretching from Florida all the way up into parts of the Northeast. There's what the satellite and radar looks like right now. And we already have those flood watches that are in effect for many this morning, including 14 million people. Additionally, along the Big Bend area, we do have the flash flood warning in effect. So just watch for that. We're going to have more rain on the way. So we likely will see those numbers grow as the day goes on and even potentially into tomorrow. You can see how slow moving this system is. So more downpours through the day today. Again, those additional rounds of rain through the mid-Atlantic up into the Northeast. It's kind of a day where if you're in New York City, maybe Washington, D.C., you want to have that umbrella handy with you, and you'll want to keep it with you for tomorrow, too. When it's all said and done, as we head through the next couple of days, rainfall totals could end up maybe 1 to 3 inches, with some higher amounts, of course, upwards of 5 inches. We will, again, be watching for that potential for the flash flooding concern. Now, switching gears, talking temperatures, because, boy, they have just not been able to get a break when it comes comes to temperatures in Texas, yesterday multiple records were broken. Places like San Angelo hit 114 for the second day in a row. That is the warmest recorded high temperature ever in that city, and we'll take another run at some of these records again today. And even if we're not hitting the records, it is oppressive out there and dangerous for many people. Del Rio heads to 109 this afternoon with a feels like temperature of 112. 117 is what it'll feel like this afternoon in Laredo. These temperatures, even the better spots, are still going to be into the 90s, and the only real improvement we see is into tomorrow for places like Dallas, low 90s, but the feels like temperatures are still going to be really uncomfortable for folks, and again, dangerous in some spots. Triple-digit actual temperatures stick around for Laredo, Del Rio, San Angelo for the extended period. It really doesn't look like we're going to see much change when it comes to this, and some relief for folks there. Meanwhile, we've got Tropical Storm Brett that is taking aim at the Lesser Antilles, winds at 70 miles per hour. It's right now just 200 miles east of Barbados and moving west at 15 miles per hour. They're going to deal with some heavy rain. We could see some flooding concerns, some strong tropical storm force winds. The good news is, as it enters parts of the Caribbean Sea, we'll slowly but surely start to see that system kind of diminishing and weakening as it encounters some upper level winds. And we also have Tropical Depression 4. This formed earlier, and it has winds right now of 35 miles per hour. Remember, tropical storm strength is 39 miles per hour, so we're close to that. It's a strong tropical depression at least, but it's moving west at 12 miles per hour. So, you know, the tropical Atlantic is in full swing at this time.
Yeah, we're already seeing it. All right, Angie, thank you so much.
Now for the latest on that building explosion in central Paris yesterday that left more than 30 people injured. Residents living near the scene say they smelled gas before the blast. This morning, the fire in the area is under control, but the search for the missing continues. NBC News foreign correspondent Ali Aruzzi has more.
An explosion rocking the heart of Paris. The blast destroying a building in the city's historic Latin Quarter.
Et d'un coup, j'ai entendu un bruit énorme. Je me suis retourné vers le lieu du bruit. Et là, j'ai vu une bombe de feu gigantesque de 20 ou 30 mètres de haut.
Nearly 40 people were hurt, including 4 critically.
Nous avons 260.
Paris's fire chief saying nearly 300 firefighters were called in to fight the blaze. Emergency workers searching the rubble for at least 2 missing people. The explosion taking place in an area usually packed with both Parisians and tourists.
It was like a bomb, actually.
Journalist Karine Dessalles was there at the time, describing the chaos that followed the blast, with many unsure what caused it.
There was some screams. You know, it blows like it was very strong, and window at the opposite side of the street explodes.
The exact cause of the blast is still under investigation. But this man who lives near the scene says the entire street smelt of gas before the explosion. The destroyed building is also home to the Paris American Academy School, where 9 students from Ohio's Kent State University were studying. The school telling NBC News all those students are safe and accounted for.
Our thanks to Ali Aruzzi for that reporting. According to French authorities, sniffer dogs have been brought in to assist with the search for the missing people. Authorities are also looking into whether or not the blast originated from inside of the building.
White House officials say they were caught off guard by President Biden's remarks calling China's President Xi Jinping a dictator. His comment also sparked a strong rebuke from China. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said in part the remarks were, quote, extremely absurd and irresponsible, seriously contradicting the basic facts. President Biden's comment came just one day after Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Chinese leaders, including President Xi. For more, we're joined by NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. So, Ali, I mean, these remarks come as the U.S. and China, they're trying to cool relations. As I just mentioned, senior U.S. officials say they were caught off guard. What else are they saying? And are they worried these comments are going to set back any progress that was made during those high-stakes meetings just earlier this week?
Yeah, Joe, good morning. Well, it's important to note some key context here that the president has been more blunt, more direct in his remarks during these private fundraisers where there are no cameras, no television reporters. And that's where he made this comment calling President Xi a dictator. But nonetheless, this comment did catch senior administration officials off guard, especially because of the timing of it. We know that Secretary of State Antony Blinken hadn't even returned to the U.S. from those key meetings with the Chinese foreign minister, as well as President Xi. Those meetings considered widely successful, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was the first Secretary of State from the U.S. to have these meetings and go to China in 5 years. But this back and forth at this point doesn't seem to have any signs of slowing down. We know that the administration is saying that the president's comments don't represent any sort of major shift in policy towards China. But of course, we know that's a two-way street. And you've mentioned China's rebuke of that comment. It's going to be interesting to see how President Xi in the future responds to this. We know that President Biden has been trying to get this in-person meeting with President Xi for some time now. The last time they met in person was in November. So how this comment could potentially affect or impact the potential scheduling of that future meeting is going to be something to watch.
So, Ali, this all comes as President Biden is going to host India's Prime Minister Modi at a state dinner later today. But Modi has come under fire for his own human rights record. Help us understand the intention behind rolling out the red carpet here.
Yeah, this is going to be just the third state visit during President Biden's term after the president of France and South Korea. And there's been some mixed reaction to this, especially because of Prime Minister Modi's history. We know that some human rights organizations have criticized his treatment of Muslims, specifically Muslims in India. We know that India hasn't taken really a side in Ukraine's war with Russia. It's continued to buy Russian oil since the war began. And it also is sort of a spotlight on India's relationship with China that doesn't have any signs of weakening. And so that's one of the main underlying reasons behind this visit and behind this red carpet rollout is to strengthen the partnership between the U.S. and India to sort of counterweight this relationship with China and Chinese aggression, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. So White House officials say that these two are going to discuss those human rights abuses respectfully, privately, but it's going to be interesting to see how that relationship between India and the U.S. is framed, especially in this joint press conference that these two are expected to have, something that's very rare for the prime minister. It hasn't happened in nearly a decade on his part.
All right, we'll be watching. Ali Rafa, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.